August 1971. In a basement corridor beneath Stanford University, a young man is coming apart. His voice tears across the recording, raw and desperate. "Let me out. I'm burning up inside, don't you know?" He is prisoner 8612. For 50 years, this scream would be replayed as proof of a terrifying truth, that ordinary people, handed a little power, become monsters. There was only one problem. The scream was a performance. The experiment was simple in design and monstrous in reputation. 24 college students, paid $15 a day, were randomly split into prisoners and guards. The prisoners were arrested at their homes by real police, fingerprinted, and blindfolded, all theater staged before the study even began. Within hours, the guards turned cruel and the prisoners turned broken. The lead researcher, Philip Zimbardo, watched it unfold from a hidden observation room. For half a century, the Stanford prison experiment sat in nearly every psychology textbook on Earth. It was used to explain Nazi camps, Abu Ghraib, genocide, torture. The message was seductive and clean: evil is not who you are, but where you are put. But behind the locked doors of the Stanford archives, tape reels and typed notes told a different story. The most famous experiment in history was not a discovery. It was a script. To understand the lie, you have to return to that basement in the summer of 1971. Zimbardo, a rising star at Stanford, converted a stretch of hallway in the psychology building into a fake jail. Cell doors, numbered smocks, a solitary confinement closet the team nicknamed the Hole. He did not stand outside as a neutral scientist. He appointed himself the prison superintendent and ran his invention from the inside. Here is the question that would take 50 years to answer: what was he really trying to prove? The official story says the guards were given no instructions. They simply invented their own brutality, proof that the uniform itself corrupts. But that story was false from the very first day. Before a single prisoner arrived, Zimbardo and his team held an orientation. They told the guards the inmates would feel powerless, and that it was the guards' job to manufacture that feeling. This was not an experiment quietly observing behavior. It was a production, handing out roles. A warden named David Jaffe, himself an undergraduate, was tasked with keeping the guards tough. When one guard stayed gentle, Jaffe pulled him aside and pressured him to be harsher, to play the part more convincingly. The cruelty everyone remembers was not spontaneous combustion. It was coached, corrected, and demanded. And the guards, whether they fully understood it or not, were auditioning for the man behind the one-way glass. The most infamous guard had a nickname: John Wayne. He swaggered through the corridor in mirrored sunglasses, barking orders in a thick southern drawl, humiliating prisoners with escalating invention. He became the face of the experiment's dark thesis, living proof that power turns men savage. His real name was Dave Eshelman. And decades later, he revealed exactly where his monster had come from. It was not welling up from inside him. It came from a movie. Eshelman later admitted his character was a deliberate act. He had watched the film Cool Hand Luke and copied its sadistic southern prison boss almost line for line. He was not losing himself to the situation. He was an aspiring actor, consciously performing, testing how far the researchers actually wanted him to push. He believed he was helping the study succeed by giving Zimbardo the drama the whole setup seemed built to produce. The corruption was craft, and he knew his audience. This detonates the entire conclusion. If the cruelty was performed to please the researchers, then the experiment proved nothing about the hidden savagery of human nature. It proved only that people will do what authority asks inside a role they volunteered to play. The guards were not becoming evil in real time. They were acting evil, on cue, for a director who was delighted with the footage he was getting. Return now to prisoner 8612, the young man screaming that he was burning up inside. His breakdown, filmed and replayed endlessly, became the emotional heart of the legend. It seemed to show a healthy mind shattered by captivity in barely 36 hours. Zimbardo held it up as chilling evidence of how quickly the prison could consume a human soul. But the man behind the scream, Douglas Corpy, would eventually tell a very different story. Corpy confessed years afterward that the meltdown was fake. He had never planned to stay, he only wanted the days to study for his graduate exams, expecting long quiet hours to read. When he asked to leave and was told, in effect, that he could not simply walk out the door, he panicked and staged a breakdown to force his release. The famous scream was not psychological collapse. It was a desperate act by a young man who thought he was trapped in a job he could no longer quit. Consider what this means. The two most iconic moments of the Stanford prison experiment, the sadistic guard and the shattered prisoner, were both later admitted to be performances. Not data. Not spontaneous discovery. Acting. The twin pillars holding up the most cited study in the history of psychology were built out of theater. And Zimbardo, the man watching from the control room, either failed to notice, or chose not to. So how did a coached, staged experiment become scientific gospel? The uncomfortable answer is that it was never really science to begin with. Zimbardo published almost nothing in serious peer-reviewed journals at the time. Instead, he carried his story straight to the public, to magazines, to television, even to a congressional hearing. He was a gifted, magnetic storyteller, and the tale was irresistible. It offered a clean, comforting explanation for the very worst things human beings do. The genius of the lie was that it absolved everyone at once. If evil lives in situations rather than people, then no one is ever truly to blame. The guard at the concentration camp, the torturer at Abu Ghraib, even you and me, all merely victims of a bad room. Zimbardo would later brand this idea, the Lucifer effect, and build an entire career on it. Textbooks copied his summary uncritically for 50 years. Almost no one thought to go back and check the tapes. Meanwhile, the inconvenient details were quietly left on the cutting room floor. The orientation coaching. The warden pushing reluctant guards to be crueler. The prisoner who admitted he faked it. The fact that there was no control group, and that the design could not be meaningfully replicated. A generation of students memorized the myth, never told that the evidence had been curated in advance to fit the ending Zimbardo already had in mind. For decades the archive sat undisturbed, boxes of tape reels and typed transcripts on a shelf in the Stanford library. Then, in 2018, a French researcher named Thibault Le Texier went digging. He listened to the original recordings, read the unpublished notes, and found the machinery of the illusion laid bare. The guard's instructions. Zimbardo's staging. The coaching sessions. It was all there, preserved in the study's own paper trail, waiting half a century to finally be heard. That same year, the writer Ben Blum published an investigation that raced across the world. He tracked down the surviving participants and simply let them talk. Corpy described faking his breakdown. Eshelman described inventing his villain from a film. Other prisoners said their supposed trauma had been exaggerated, or performed. One by one, the survivors of the experiment dismantled the very story that had made them famous. The legend did not fall to outside critics. It fell to its own cast. Zimbardo, still alive and defiant, dismissed the criticism and insisted his conclusions held. But the damage was already done. Ethics boards had long since made such an experiment impossible to run again. And when later researchers tried to recreate anything close to it, the results stubbornly refused to match. The savagery only surfaced when someone was actively directing it. Left alone, ordinary people, it turned out, were not nearly so eager to become monsters. Here is the final, uncomfortable twist. The Stanford prison experiment did reveal something profound about human behavior, just not the thing it claimed. Its real lesson is not that a uniform turns you into a beast. It is how easily an entire civilization will swallow a dramatic story, told by a confident authority, without ever once asking to see the evidence. For 50 years, the smartest institutions on Earth taught a piece of theater as settled scientific fact. The experiment that supposedly proved how blindly humans obey authority became the ultimate proof of exactly that. We obeyed Zimbardo. We trusted the man in the control room, printed his conclusions, and never checked the tapes he was sitting on. The guards followed their director without question. And then the rest of us did too, for half a century, repeating his script back to one another as though it were our own idea. The real experiment was never happening in that basement. It was happening in the world outside it, in every classroom and living room that swallowed the myth whole. The Stanford prison experiment proved that ordinary people will do almost anything a trusted authority tells them to, including believe a lie for 50 years. The prison was never the basement. The prison was the story we all agreed not to question.